Welcome to Double Portion Inheritance with Maria Merola and Gary Wold, brought to you by DoublePortionInheritance.com. Since 1981, Maria heard the call of Yahuwah to become a watchman to the house of Yisrael and to those within the traditional Christian church. She was instructed to warn them against the false doctrines and pagan traditions of men. After 25 years of studying Scripture, the word of Yahuwah came to Maria again in 2007 as she was called out of the corporate world to become a full-time intercessor and prophetic teacher. The name of the ministry, Double Portion Inheritance, was given to her after she received the revelation of the two houses of Yisrael from Ezekiel 37:16. The mission of this ministry is to bring together the stick of Judah and the stick of Joseph for the return of the Messiah, Yahushua. And now, Maria Merola.
Our Messiah said that wherever the carcass is, the eagles will be gathered together. What are they gathered together to do? You see, Yahushua was telling his disciples that the wicked will be left behind here on earth to be eaten by the birds, as described in Revelation 19:17 through 19. In Revelation 11:14, Yahushua is seen returning on a white horse with an army that follows him, and they are clothed in fine linen, white and clean. Who is this army? Hazon, Revelation 19:18, and says, to her was granted that she should be arrayed in fine linen, clean and white, for the fine linen is the righteousness of the Kodeshim, the saints. And if you keep on reading in verse 14, it says, and the armies that followed him were clothed in white linen, fine and clean. So we know it's the bride. Some people think it's the Malachim or the angels. No, it's the bride. Now, of course, the Malachim could be with them as well because they're going to be gathering the elect from the four corners of the earth. But make no mistake, the bride has been somewhere that she's now returning with the bridegroom. And now she's in her new resurrected body, so her body's indestructible. And, some people try to argue Deuteronomy 24, where it says that a groom is not to go out to war for the first year of marriage. He's to stay home with his bride and learn how to make her happy. But in this case, it doesn't apply because they're both in their incorruptible bodies. There's no chance of either one of them being killed because they're indestructible. He's not leaving her behind and going off to war alone without her. She's with him. They're fighting together. And like I said, they're both in their incorruptible bodies, so it doesn't apply. See, the bride gets to watch him take vengeance on her enemies as the wicked are left behind as prey for the birds. On the Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah, the bride will be taken away at the seventh and last trumpet. In other words, after 1,260 days of tribulation. In other words, after the ministry of the two witnesses is over, they are taken up to Shamayim. So the bride and the groom elope and go off to the bridal chamber in heaven, which is the chuppah. They will be there for 7 literal days, just like Jacob's wedding to Leah in Genesis 29:27 through 28. Samson also had a 7-day wedding in Judges 14:12. See, this is how we know there's a recurring pattern of ancient Hebrew weddings lasting for 7 days. So how do we know that the bridegroom will take his bride into a bridal chamber? Well, we read about it in Psalm 19:5 and in Joel 2:16. We see this language being used of the bridegroom coming out of his chamber and the bride coming out of her closet. But see, the English words that are translated as chamber and closet are the Hebrew word chuppah. Chuppah. Isn't that interesting? So the bridegroom is coming out of his chuppah and the bride is coming out of her closet, which is also chuppah. And what does this tell us? They have finished consummating for 7 days. And now what are they doing? They're coming back to earth. You see, in an ancient Hebrew wedding custom, the bride and groom went away for 7 days and spent 7 days in the bridegroom's father's house, which is heaven. Remember in John 14, what did Yahushua say? I go and prepare a place for you, that where I am, you will be also. This is totally in keeping with an ancient Hebrew wedding custom. The bridegroom would go away after they signed a ketubah and became betrothed. The bridegroom would go away and prepare a place, a wedding huppah, in other words, like a honeymoon suite. He would go off to prepare a honeymoon suite for his bride. And then he would come back for her and he would take her to himself. Explanation. There are 10 days, commencing with the Feast of Trumpets, leading up to the Day of Atonement. These extra 3 days is when the bride is given a shout from a distance. And I'll explain that in a little bit with Zola Levitt's commentary. This was an ancient Hebrew custom that the bride would hear the shouts from a distance, a 3 days journey away, letting her know the groom is getting close. So I suspect this might be the same 3.5 days where the two witnesses, that would be Ephraim and Judah, they're dead in the streets 3 days and 3 nights, just like our Messiah, and then they are raised up, resurrected, just like Messiah in Revelation 11:12. Once the bride is resurrected after 3.5 days, the seventh and last trumpet is sounded. Revelation 11:11 through 15. You will also notice another pattern that the bride follows after her Messiah. If you have studied the ancient Hebrew wedding customs, the bridegroom comes and snatches away his bride in the middle of the night. What is the only feast that begins at night? The Feast of Trumpets. This is why it is nicknamed the day that no man knows. You see, in an ancient Hebrew wedding custom, the bride and groom elope and go away for 7 days. Where do they go? It's called the Bridal Chamber, or in Hebrew, the huppah. Psalm 19:5, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber and rejoices as a strong man to run a race. In Joel 2:16, gather the people, sanctify the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children and those that suck the breasts. Let the bridegroom go forth of his chamber and the bride out of her closet. Those that suck the breast means infants, okay? What are the Hebrew words in the above verses for chamber and closet? It's the huppah. See, the bride and the groom both come out of the huppah. Okay, they come out of the huppah. Okay, in modern Hebrew weddings, they just, make a temporary little shelter like this where the bride and groom say their vows under the huppah. Gary and I did the same thing. But in ancient times, it was an apartment. It was an apartment on the father's estate, the groom's father's estate. It was more than just a little canopy. It was an apartment. So you'll notice the similarity between the huppah or the chamber and the ark of protection. The Hebrew word above means defense. Therefore, it means a place of protection for the bride. She is taken away to a safe place. In the account of Noah's Ark, there were literally 7 days from the time that Noah entered the ark and when the rain began to fall as the wrath of Elohim was being poured out upon the wicked. Now look what it says in Bereshit. Genesis 7:4, it says, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. See, the pattern is there. Noah and his family were taken into the ark, just like the bride is taken into the heavenly huppah. The ark was lifted up off the earth by the water that rose and caused the ark to be lifted up from the earth. The bride is taken for 7 days, just like Noah and his family were taken for 7 days into the ark. But it didn't rain for 7 days. In other words, there's those 7 days inside the tent, which I believe that Noah's family waited, and then the day of wrath was like the Day of Atonement. It's when the rain began to fall. And that's the wrath of Elohim. From the time that Yahushua snatches away the elect, 1 Thessalonians 4:17, until his wrath is poured out on Yom Kippur, which is also called the Day of Vengeance. It's the day of avenging or atoning. There's a total of 10 days. Revelation 11, let's read it. Starting with verse 11, after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from Elohim entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up here. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. And the same hour there was a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell. And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were afraid and gave glory to the Elohim of heaven. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe comes quickly. And the seventh angel sounded, the seven malach, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Yahuwah and of his Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever. Now, as you can see, the seventh angel sounds at the last trumpet, which is on the Feast of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah. The Feast of Tabernacles is on the 15th day of the 7th month of Etanim, or Tishri. Etanim is the biblical name for the 7th month, but Tishri is the modern term. This is when the wedding reception takes place in front of the guests. You see, in an ancient Hebrew wedding, the bride and groom elope first. They go away for 7 days. Then they return to the bride's family's house for yet another 7 days to have the wedding reception with the guests. After the 7-day wedding reception, the bridegroom and the bride, they will begin their reign in the Sabbath millennium. Together, they will rule and reign for 1,000 years. Now, I want to address a difficult passage that people often use to support the idea of the wicked being taken and the righteous being left behind. Let's talk about the harvest of the wheat and the tares. You're going to see why people are confused about this. Matthew 13:24-30. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, did not you sow good seed in your field? From where then has it tares? He said unto them, An enemy has done this. The servants said unto him, Will you then that we go and gather them up? But he said, No, lest while you gather up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather you together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. Now, as you can see, both groups are gathered. The term taken or left is not used anywhere in this parable. Because our Messiah said that the tares will be gathered first, most people assume this means that the tares are taken somewhere while the wheat is left behind. However, the wheat and the tares are both gathered. Just because the tares are harvested first does not mean they are taken away from the earth. What this means is that the tares are gathered to be burned down here on earth, where they shall be eaten by the birds. This is also illustrated in Isaiah 18 and also in Revelation 19. Let's take a look at these two passages. We will see that this is the same event being described. This is the great day of wrath for the wicked. Isaiah 18:6-7 says, They shall be left together unto the fowls of the mountains, and to the beasts of the earth, and the fowls shall summer upon them, and all the beasts of the earth shall winter upon them. In that time shall the present be brought unto Yahuwah of hosts, of a people scattered and peeled, and from a people terrible from their beginning hitherto, a nation meted out and trodden underfoot, whose land the rivers have spoiled, to the place of the name of Yahuwah of hosts, the Mount Zion. So the bride is not going to be taken back to Mount Sinai, as some people who teach this doctrine called the Greater Exodus, they say the bride's going back to Mount Sinai. No, that's impossible because the apostle Paul, in Galatians 4, he likens Mount Sinai to Hagar and bondage. Why? Because what happened at Mount Sinai? They rejected the covenant. And when Moses came back, what happened? They were worshiping the golden calf. So the apostle Paul talks about two covenants. He's not talking about the old covenant and the new covenant. What he's talking about is the first set of stone tablets and the second set of stone tablets. Understand, the first set of stone tablets was delivered at Mount Sinai, which genders to bondage, which is Hagar, because they were, worshiping the golden calf. They were still under bondage to sin. So why would we go back to the place that reminds Yahuwah of the place where we committed adultery with the golden calf? No, he's not bringing us there. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and answers to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, he's talking about the heavenly Jerusalem. The Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. So, proof, we're not going back to Mount Sinai. Okay. In fact, let's go to Hebrews chapter 12. You'll see further proof. Okay. In Hebrews chapter 12, it says, "For you are not come unto the mount that might be touched and that burns with fire, nor unto blackness and darkness and tempest, and the sound of a trumpet and the voice of words, which voice they that heard entreated that the word should not be spoken to them any more. For they could not endure that which was commanded. And if so much as a beast touch the mountain, it shall be stoned or thrust through with a dart. And so terrible was the sight that Moshe said, I exceedingly fear and quake." Now it says, "But you are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living Elohim, the heavenly Yerushalayim, and unto an innumerable company of Melachim, to the general assembly and assembly of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to Elohim, the judge of all, and the spirits of just men made perfect." So you see, we're not going to Mount Sinai. We're going to the heavenly Jerusalem. Scripture tells us this. So right here it is Isaiah, that those wicked people shall be left together unto the fowls of the mountains. Okay? But Yahuwah's people, a nation meted out, okay, they are going to the place of the name of Yahuwah, which is Mount Zion. I do believe there's going to be a greater exodus, but the greater exodus, I know some people are not going to like what I'm saying.
Some people think there's going to be actually some sort of splitting of the seas so that we can all march to Jerusalem.
I believe the greater exodus is the same thing as the harpazo. We're going to be taken up to Shamayim to be changed into incorruption, into immortality, and then we're coming back to inherit the earth. And also, I do believe that there are those who will be standing at the Mount of Olives waiting for him. And of course, they are part of the earthly exodus, that they will be coming from all nations to meet him at the Mount of Olives. I definitely believe that. But do I believe that the oceans will split in half and that they're going to walk across dry land? I don't know. I don't see that in scripture. I just don't see it.
There'll be people all around the world who don't have enough money, even if they didn't believe Yahushua was the Messiah. Maybe they were, I don't know, lukewarm Christians. Maybe they were lukewarm Mormons who didn't believe all the crazy stuff but I don't know, you have people in different religions who don't really even realize what their own religion's about. Or even Catholics who don't even understand what Catholicism really is. And maybe there's people who, when the Rapturo happens, they're going to realize that there's a reason that they were left out, and that if they were doing things right, that they would have been part of that group, and they're going to be doing some soul searching. I don't believe that everyone's all of a sudden going to have the money, and within 10 days, we're going to be able to get, a significant portion of the world's population to all travel to Jerusalem so that they can meet him at the Mount of Olives, so that they can be the bride.
Well, it says right here, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So this is the second coming. This is not the same thing as the harpazo. The word immediately doesn't mean like within seconds. It just means, soon. So in other words, soon after the tribulation. Because why? There's 3.5 years of tribulation for the two witnesses, but there's 10 more days of tribulation for those of Smyrna, right? The total days of the tribulation, right? After that, including the 10 days, then he's coming back with power and great glory. And it says, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So I'm seeing this as many will be martyred for their faith. Even said that Smyrna would be martyred, that he's probably going to, gather them all together into one place, right? There's still missing gaps for me too. I don't pretend to understand all of it, but from what I can see, I think that the second coming will be him gathering the elect, those that didn't make it into the harpazo on Feast of Trumpets, that he will gather them, together from the four winds. So I don't know how that's going to look, but he's probably going to somehow gather them to the Mount of Olives. I don't know how that's going to work.
And maybe it's a process too. I don't know. I mean, we obviously know that, there's going to be 3 years of no rain for Egypt, because they're not, at least the government of Egypt isn't recognizing the feasts and sojourning to Jerusalem. So if there's time for them to get in line, then who knows what time frame we're talking for the second half of the bride to be considered the bride.
Well, think about this. Philip was translated to meet the Ethiopian eunuch, right? He was taken to where he could minister to the Ethiopian eunuch. Acts 8:39. And when they were come up out of the water, the Spirit of Yahuwah caught away Philip, that the eunuch saw him no more, and he went on his way rejoicing. So Philip was caught away to another place. He was transported, sort of like Elijah the prophet when he was taken in a chariot of fire to another place. So I believe it's possible that when he gathers the elect from the four corners of the earth, that he's doing the same thing that he did with Philip. He catches them away to Jerusalem, but that's not the same thing as those that get taken up to heaven for the harpazo. So there's still a lot of missing pieces for me as well. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to play out, but that could also be a possibility. Okay, so Revelation 19, and I saw an angel, a malach standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great Elohim, that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeded out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. So we can see from Isaiah 18:6 that the wicked were left together here on earth to be eaten by the birds on the mountains. They are not taken anywhere. They are left here on earth to be trodden underfoot. In Revelation 19:21, the birds, the fowls were filled with the flesh of these wicked people. Now we can begin to understand what our Messiah was describing in Matthew 13:24. He was showing us that the tares will be gathered, not taken away from the earth, but where will the wicked tares be gathered to? So you see these vultures gathering around these dead bodies, picking the flesh off the bones. Revelation 16:14 says, "For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of Elohim Almighty." So the wicked tares are gathered to the battle of the great day of wrath. And the righteous, which are the wheat, will be taken out of the way under the protection of Yahuwah, just like Noah's family were taken away in the ark under his protection. See, the wicked tares will be destroyed as in the days of the flood. After the wicked tares are destroyed, the elect are then gathered together at the marriage supper of the Lamb for the Feast of Tabernacles. So what you have is the tares being gathered first to the battle, and then the bride is gathered to the Feast of Tabernacles, which takes place down here on earth for another 7 days. Because like I said, in an ancient Hebrew wedding, the bride and groom went away for 7 days for the honeymoon, and then they go back to the bride's family's house to celebrate the reception with all the guests. So there's 7 days in heaven, and then there's another 7 days down here on earth during the Feast of Tabernacles. So the wicked are gathered first to the battle. Those are the tares. And then the wheat are gathered to the Feast of Tabernacles for the marriage supper of the Lamb. Matthew 22:10 says, "So those servants went out into the highways and gathered together all, as many as they found, both bad and good, and the wedding was furnished with guests." And then in Mark 13:27, it says, "And then shall he send his malachim, his angels, and shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from the uttermost part of the earth to the uttermost part of heaven." In Matthew 13:30, where the tares are gathered into barns, the Greek word is as follows. It's silego, which means to gather up, to collect. In Mark 13:27, where the angels gather the elect, the Greek word is episenugo, which means to collect upon the same place, to gather together. This is not the same Greek word that is used in 1 Thessalonians 4:17 for caught up or harpazo. Neither is it the same Greek word that is used for taken in Matthew 24:40-41. The word for taken in Matthew 24:40-41 is number 3880, paralambano, which means to receive near, to associate with oneself in a familiar or intimate act or relation, to assume an office, to learn, to receive. For the wicked to be gathered together in one place to the battle does not mean they are taken unto Yahuwah in a familiar or intimate act. Let's talk about the harvest of the grapes of wrath, which takes place down here on earth. You will notice that the wicked are likened unto grapes of wrath that are harvested upon the earth. Okay, Hazon, Revelation 14. "And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another malach, or angel, came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time is come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped." See, these are the tares. They are being harvested down here on earth while the wheat is being taken into a special place called the barn. What does a barn symbolize? You see, our Messiah was born in a barn. He was born in what we call a manger, which is an animal trough. It wasn't a sukkah. Everybody thinks he was born on the Feast of Tabernacles. No, he was born on the Feast of Trumpets. That's for another study. His body served as a tabernacle as he was the Word that became flesh and dwelt with us in a mortal body. Okay, what this means is that the elect who are his seed are going to follow in his pattern by being born again with a new resurrected body in a heavenly barn or a heavenly tabernacle. The prophet Haggai prophesied about the seed that would be in the barn, Haggai 2:19. This was a prophecy about when our Messiah was conceived. This means that our Messiah, who was the promised seed of the woman in Genesis 3:15, also produces his own seed with the woman, Israel. And she will give birth to a man-child, the same one new man that we see in Ephesians 2:15 and Revelation 12. The seed of Messiah was in Miriam's womb, the barn, on the 24th day of the 9th month of Kislev. That's Hanukkah. Hanukkah. He was conceived on Hanukkah, according to this prophecy in Haggai. And likewise, the bride who is born again of incorruptible seed is also going to be gathered into the barn, the heavenly tabernacle, in order to be changed, born again with an immortal, incorruptible body. You will notice in the verses below that the wicked are gathered up as grapes of wrath. Okay, Revelation 14. And another Malach came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another Malach came out from the altar, which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. And the Malach thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of Elohim. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. And by the way, I looked up furlongs, and it's the size of a stadium. So we're talking 1,600 stadiums. That's how much blood there will be. Now, there are more examples of the righteous being taken and the wicked being left behind. Let's see those patterns. Okay, we see the same pattern in Bereshit, Genesis 19:24, when the wicked are left behind in Sodom and Gomorrah to be destroyed by Yahuwah's wrath. But the righteous were accounted worthy to escape. In other words, taken away. As the Malachim, the angels, came and took Lot and his family away from Sodom and Gomorrah. The same shall be true in the end, as Yahushua warns us that we should pray always that we would be accounted worthy to escape Yah's wrath to come. What does he say in Luke 21:36? He says, Watch you therefore and pray always that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and stand before the Son of Man. If the righteous are left here, how are they escaping? No, the bride gets to escape. We see this with Philadelphia. She has the open door that no man can shut. Yahushua reveals to us that the disobedient who are deceived into following the anti-Messiah will not escape the wrath of Elohim, but those who overcome, Revelation 3:10, by resisting the anti-Messiah are not appointed to wrath. Therefore, the overcoming Kodeshim, or the saints, do escape the wrath of Elohim in the first resurrection. 1 Thessalonians 5:3-9, it says, Then sudden destruction comes upon them, and they shall not escape. This is talking about the disobedient. For Elohim has not appointed us, the overcomers, to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Yahushua HaMashiach. So, let's talk about what our Messiah said concerning remember Lot's wife. In Genesis 19:26, we are told that when Lot's family was escaping Sodom and Gomorrah, that his wife looked back, even though they were instructed by the Malach of Yahuwah not to look back. Messiah retells the account in Luke's gospel, but he also buttresses this with a teaching on who is left and who is taken. In Luke 17:26-27, he says, "And as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be also in the days of the Son of Man. They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all." Okay, destroyed who? Obviously, not Noah and his family. If you did not know any better, the way this sentence is worded, it sounds as if Noah and his family were destroyed, because it says Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. But who was destroyed? It was they, the wicked people who were left out of the ark. Okay, Luke 17:28-29. It says, "Likewise also, as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all." Are we seeing the pattern yet? Lot and his family went out. And who was destroyed? Those who were left behind in Sodom and Gomorrah. They were destroyed. Luke 17:30-32. "Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. In that day, he which shall be upon the housetop and his stuff in the house, let him not come down to take it away. And he that is in the field, let him likewise not return back. Remember Lot's wife." Now, why does he say this? Yahushua is telling his disciples that whoever is on the rooftop should not go back to get his stuff because they are about to go somewhere. Then he compares those who attempt to stay behind to get their stuff with Lot's wife. If you're one of those people who tries to go back to get your stuff, you're like Lot's wife. If the righteous are not going anywhere and they are going to be left here on earth, then why are they being told that they have to be ready to get away quickly and not go back to get their belongings? Luke 17:33-37. "Whosoever shall seek to save his life shall lose it, and whosoever shall lose his life shall preserve it. I tell you, in that night." Now he says it's at night. Why does he say it's at night? Because, as I said, the bridegroom comes at midnight. We read about that in the parable of the virgins. This is traditionally when a bridegroom would come. He would come at midnight, in the middle of the night, when everybody was asleep. I tell you, in that night, there shall be two in one bed. Now, it doesn't say men. The King James translators added the word men. It just says two in one bed. The one shall be taken and the other left. Two, it doesn't say women. It just says two shall be grinding together. The one shall be taken and the other left. Two shall be in the field. The one shall be taken and the other left. And they answered and said unto him, Where, master? And he said unto them, Wheresoever the body is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Okay, this is key, so pay attention. In the above verse, we see that Yahushua is describing to us one who is taken and one who is left. We are told specifically to remember Lot's wife. We are told if we are on the rooftop, don't go down to get our stuff. We are told if we are in the field, not to turn back. Stay with me on this. We know in the story of Lot, righteous Lot and his family were the ones who were taken out of the city, but the wicked remained. Here in Luke 17, we are told to remember Lot's wife. Why? Because Lot's wife looked back as she was leaving Sodom and Gomorrah, and she did not escape the wrath of Elohim. See, she had the opportunity to leave. She was taken out of the city, but she looked back. If the wicked people are the ones being taken, then why are we told to remember Lot's wife? Was Lot's wife accounted worthy to escape wrath? No, she was left here to perish. So that concludes today's portion of this teaching. I will continue next with part 3.
Yahuwah bless you and keep you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. We hope you've enjoyed today's broadcast and that you are encouraged in your walk with Messiah. For more teachings, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified of our latest content. Visit Maria's many blogs at doubleportioninheritance.com. That's doubleportioninheritance.com. This ministry is made possible by the prayers and support of listeners like you. To make a donation by PayPal or Venmo.com, use the email address doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. That's doubleportioninheritance@gmail.com. On behalf of Maria and Gary at Double Portion Inheritance Ministries, may Yahuwah bless you.